We have to start, I think, welcome everybody. The session, the title of the session is the perception of migrants in European countries. We will have only 3 speakers. It means that every speaker could have about 18 minutes to have the time for discussion. I'm waiting for more people. I will read the titles of the papers. On the feedback, perception of migrants from non-European Union countries in Slovakia, the case of PRZYCZYNY, Anna Górnicka, the title Between Desirable Worker, Culture, Threat and Racialized Other, Perception of Polish Migrants in Iceland, and the third lecture to Luka, Immigration in the European Union Parallels. Okay.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrej Polipes. I am an economic migrant in Slovakia and I will talk about Slovakia because situation about migration there is still, let's say, critical, and there are some practical consequences, of course. Maybe you know that in 2016, the fascist party of Slovakia entered into the parliament and got 14 members of the parliament. They are real neo-fascists, so it means their members are persecuted for the Holocaust, and they are playing anti-system opposition. Interesting is that 25% of the voters are first-time voters. It means young people, and they got radicalized as well. Now there is a paramilitary formation called Slovenskí branci. It's a youth organization composed of approximately 300 individuals. They have their units placed in every region, and they are doing military drill in their free time. They are prepared to protect Slovakia, of course, also against migrants. And the problem is that they have very radical opinions, and on some videos from military trainings, they have the St. George ribbons expressing solidarity with insurgents in Donbass. There are also other big movements like the Generation of Identity, which spread from France and Italy to Slovakia as well. They are also neo-fascists, but they don't call themselves neo-fascists. They are for protecting identity and identities, but when you search the ideology, it's very controversial because they are also for protecting ethnic identities, and they are against mixing of races. They are in favor of segregation and many other controversial things. So migration is seen mainly in Slovakia as a security threat, but there are differences. I'm sure you know this Eurobarometer survey from 2015, and from the results it's obvious that Slovak and Czech society is very negatively perceiving migrants. But on the other side, there are countries, they saw migrants from non-EU countries in a positive way. From Eurobarometer, we have also other data about the segments of the society, and of course, older people, they have more negative attitudes than younger people. It's also visible about classes, that working class and people with low income, they feel more danger from migration from non-EU countries, and they perceive migrants in a more negative way than the people who are from rich classes. Also about socio-professional category, you have students with quite positive attitude, let's say, and then you have groups of people like manual workers, they feel more danger. Of course, managers, they have positive attitude because they see advantage of migration. Also, education matters a lot, and the gender is not playing so big role. But the problem is that these data were aggregated at EU level, and every country is different. And my idea was, why not to look into the region, how it looks like. So we started research with my student, and we picked up intra-region. The special thing about intra-region is that there is nothing special in intra-region. You know? It's not a region surrounding capital, it's not totally peripheral region, there is a good connection to Bratislava and Budapest. There are 600,000 people living in intra-region, and the local capital is Intercity with approximately 65,000 people. In the north, there are small mountains, but the landscape generally is quite flat. We went to the streets of Nitra and we started to make interview. The sample is 231 people. It was, let's say, more qualitative research because one interview took between 12 to 15 minutes approximately. So we spent quite a lot of time collecting the data. But after I looked at it, and it reflected more or less the structure of the society regarding socio-economic setup, gender, the age groups, and also education. We did many things with the people, and of course, when we are talking about perception of migration, the first things you evaluate is the physical appearance, especially the ethnicity or the color. So we gave to the people 8 pictures showing different families and different individuals. Please remember these pictures. Well, there is obviously family with some Asian origin. There is a black family, there is Arab family, and white family. The purpose of the research was not to show that Slovaks are racist, but maybe the idea was to research what are the differences. Are women giving more points of sympathy than men? What is the influence of education in it? What is the influence of the way of life? So we generated a lot of hypotheses and then we researched the data. So these are the families. We expected that people will rate families better than individuals, and here are individuals. We tried to put their positive pictures, so people on pictures are smiling, but I'm not sure about the lady. There are, let's say, some concerns about the methodology, because when you meet people face to face and you ask them to give points of sympathy, nobody would like to look bad and will put 0, 0, 0. But there were also examples who gave 0 points as well, and I had a feeling that people were not shy to put 0 points. What do you think will be the result? Of course, we expected that the white people, especially the guy with Slovak symbols and gold medal, will be the most positively evaluated. But the results were quite disappointing for me. I expected that maybe there will be some hierarchy, because especially people with Asian features, they are considered to be very well integrated in Slovak and Czech society as well. They have no problems to find the jobs, they are working on marketplaces, they have their business, their children are studying at universities, so there is no problem with these minority groups. I expected some little prejudice towards black and of course against Arabs. But finally we discovered that there is no real difference in between these foreigners. So now here you can see the averages counted for evaluation, and yes, you see the average is approximately around 4. Chinese family, black family, Arab family, not big differences. White family is about 8. People don't want to, let's say, put 10 points because it's obvious, so they somehow rationally underrated a little bit the white people. And of course, the most negatively has been seen the Arab woman with points slightly more than 2. Well, but if you count 2 minus 10, 10 minus 2 for the white, and you put some points for solidarity, let's say, to the Arab women, it's almost around 0. We discovered some small differences. Of course, there is a small difference between women and men. Women were generally more critical than men and giving less points of sympathy. But the differences are really very small, and it's maybe because we had relatively small sample. What about education? We discovered that education really matters. Not big differences, but we discovered also that it really depends what type of education you have. People with university in social science and with humanitarian orientation, they gave more points of sympathy than people with some basic education. This is influenced that in the group with basic education there are also some young people. They are at universities, but they don't finish the degree yet. And then there is a very critical group of people with technical education. They have, let's say, more critical perception of those migrants. Age group. Here is also evident that a group of students, many students, 20 to 26, they are more positive. It's interesting that in this group, Chinese are a little bit under-evaluated, and of course the group 65 plus was the group mostly negatively evaluating and perceiving the migrants. Another task was to say words about association. We counted first 3 words. So please tell me the first 3 words you associate with migration from non-EU countries. And the top word was Islam, terrorism, war, fear, economic migration, different culture, diseases, non-adaptability, health, different mentality, and then it decreased. Some words were like little bit crazy, like burqa. Or, there were difference between men and women. Men were saying more often terrorism, different culture, economic migration, fear Islam, and there were 4 men saying the rape more than women said. The women associated the migration from non-EU countries with war, terrorism, Islam, and economic migration. So the association is slightly different according to gender. I haven't time yet to look at the data according to the education or some different variables entering the research. Another task was to estimate how many Muslims are living in foreign countries, and we gave them Slovakia, Germany, Sweden, and the UK. It's very interesting that all people, they highly underestimate the population of Muslims in foreign countries. There was nobody who was close, let's say 1 million plus minus. The maximum response was 2 million in the case of Germany, Sweden. And from the research, it was obvious that people, they don't have basic knowledge about general populations. Well, okay, Germany, maybe 40 million people, so there will be 300,000 Muslims. Of course, they were very close to Slovakia. It's obvious that they know their country slightly better and they have quite a good estimation. But still, they underestimated also the number of Muslims in Slovakia. So on average, it was 20 times less than the real population of Muslim is. We did also other things with the people, but maybe we can discuss later. Thank you very much. Maybe here is one more thing. It's according to education. Education don't really matter. Also, the gender don't really matter because the estimates were far enough from all groups. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this time discipline. Maybe somebody has one question, the speaker will answer immediately. Okay. 2 questions. Okay.
My question is really short. Did nobody mention the word refugee when they were asked what words they associated?
The word refugee, yes, there were some, but very low number. You know, refugee in Slovak language has very positive connotation, and when you use the word refugee, you will be labeled as a sunny person or sluníčkář, person who is out of realistic evaluation, and you will be accused of unrealistic perception of migration. So Slovaks use mainly the words migrants, and it was also in the research.
Okay, and now the floor for Anna Wojciechowska. Yeah.
To start from the paper. I will summarize it. We have the original one. It's from 1991, when the migration of Poles was just beginning. It's a daily paper, and they featured interview with a manager in the fish processing plant that has been hiring Poles already for some few years. And she praised Polish workers for their apparent diligence, saying that Poles come here for 6 and 10 months, and they start working on the very first day. These people learn fast and are very eager to work. They want to work all week long. So she further explains that all workers come only temporarily, and typically they were living with their families in Poland. She gives example of one Polish couple that is still in Poland. They were still sharing the apartment with their parents, so they couldn't afford for the flat, and that was part of the reason why they came to Iceland. And she's also explaining that on average salaries are much higher, like 10 months of work in Iceland makes for 5 years of work in Poland. And then at some point she also reassures that the managers, that the salaries that the Poles are getting are on the equal level with Icelandic workers. And the article ends with the information that there is about 400 foreign workers being already registered in the country. And they are explaining that this increased number reflects the diminished interest of local labor to work in fish processing, which Icelanders did not want to undertake even if they were unemployed. So this is what I wanted to do here. I just want to shortly present the political debate around the migration that has been pertaining to migration since its beginning, sort of. So kind of put the Polish migration and discussion about Polish migration and this kind of arguments in the context of kind of more historical discussion about migration, labor migration to Iceland. So Bridget Anderson argued that migration is typically justified by the apparent needs of the national economy and labor market, and usually presented in this way by employers. It is, however, questionable whether this argumentation does not conceal employers' preferences to hire cheaper migrant workers rather than improve wages and working conditions to attract the local workers. Likewise, in the British case, and it's also a British case, but Mackenzie and Ford, they were doing research and they concluded, migrant workers were treated as valuable resources for perceived work ethic and reliable that evaluate them as good workers above the local labor alternative. But they concluded the research that this rhetoric was actually reflecting the company's strategy to maintain the company competitiveness by minimizing labor costs. And then moving to Iceland. The contemporary migration to Iceland, to which the migration of Poles belongs, has been largely triggered by economic growth that followed introduction of fishing quotas in Iceland in 1984. However, the ITQ, this individual transferable quota, had negative impact on fishing communities. It virtually meant privatization of natural resources and caused concentration of the fishing rights in hands of few people. As a result, some of the local companies got bankrupt, Many people were moving away from fishing villages to towns, especially women that were main labor force in fish processing. Many went to Reykjavik to get education and look for better opportunities. Recruitment of workers from abroad became a highly debated issue and met strong opposition of the labor unions, typically focused on protection of the rights of the local workers. Since 1951, in order to hire someone from abroad, employers have to apply for a permit. In 1961, Icelandic labor market was open to citizens from the Nordic countries, and later in 93 or 94, when it came to force, when Iceland joined the European Union, Iceland became a part of the common European Union labor market. So, in order to apply for work permit, employer usually was required to prove that there was no Icelandic person willing to take this position, and the procedure also obligated him to enroll the potential candidate to the trade union, to sort of adequate trade union. And this exactly gave the unions power to sort of control the number of workers coming, and there were cases at the beginning of migration when groups of Polish welders were, for example, stopped because the unions didn't give permission. And in my opinion, this debate over migration was also, I mean, in a way it was clearly influenced by the nationalistic discourse, evoking rhetoric that was characteristic for the Icelandic struggle for independence. After more than 600 years of foreign supremacy, Iceland became sovereign in 1918, although Danish king remained the head of the state until 1944. Icelandic national movement was built around the idea of uniqueness in Icelandic landscape, language, and culture, but also idea of purity. This implied often protective attitudes and certain skepticism to foreign influences, anything that could contaminate this purity. For instance, Valur Ingvarsson recording famous agreement between Icelandic officials and US representatives forbidding black soldiers to station at the NATO base in Keflavik. Also, the women that were involved with the soldiers was regarded as being polluted. Þórarinsdóttir showed how the ideology of purity affected language policy in Iceland. One of the kind of characteristic things for Iceland is that they translate nearly every word to Icelandic and avoid any English loan words. And this is also, I mean, Iceland is often required as a classless society, but language is one of the factors that stratificates the people. So how people speak, how correctly they speak Icelandic. And these attitudes revealed also in the debate around the recruiting immigrants from abroad when there were labor shortages. Iceland has been, probably you know that Iceland was a relatively homogeneous nation for quite a long, and the foreign population was not exceeding 2% until 1998. So already in the 19th century, when development of the fishery caused great outflow of people from agriculture to fishing villages, the idea to recruit foreign workers met strong opposition. Increasingly, the few voices in support of migration were often built on this. There were people who were for accept immigrants and recruit, but they were often based on very stereotypical views of the nations and their politics. So this is one voice in this discussion for migrants. This person also refers to Poles as being one of the cheap labor in Europe used by Russia and France, but he's very much in favor of Chinese migrants, and as he explains, no one can compare in the perseverance and self-sufficiency with Italians, but Chinese. They go in April or May to Germany, Switzerland, France, or Russia, but go home in the autumn or in October or November with summer salary, 200-300 kroner. Italians have their own food, so do Chinese. Polenta, which is made from rice, flour, and water, and is very cheap. When they finish working for 12-15 hours, they lie on the floor for the night and just lie on one part. However, after this debate, and it was kind of recurring debate, it was decided to search for workers rather in most ethnically related nations. Actually, the best option was to attract Icelandic descendants to return back to Iceland. But otherwise, Icelanders were in favor of Danish, Norwegians, and Swedes or Faroe, or people from Faroe Islands, and further Germany and British. So similar debate took place in 1927 when a new immigration law was introduced in Iceland. And then some tried to encourage the recruitment of Poles, pointing out that the Danes and French imported Poles in big numbers because they were both cheap and good labor. And again, shortly after the Second World War, when many construction projects were undertaken in Iceland. Nevertheless, until quite recently, when in need, Iceland rather looked for the workers, as I was saying, from other Scandinavian countries. So in March, in 1947, 2,250 foreign nationals with temporary work permits were working in Iceland, and more than half of them was from Faroe Islands, and almost the other half from Denmark. Correspondingly, when employers looked for workers in fish processing, they first were searching in Norway, in Faroe Islands. Then in the middle 1960s, Icelanders established recruitment agencies in Britain, and often through this channel were coming workers from Australia and New Zealand. So I would argue it required some sort of effort and adequate discourse to make grants for migration from Poland, to justify it and to naturalize it. And thus, articles like the one I was quoting at the beginning. So it was like a way to familiarize Poles and present them first of all as diligent and hardworking, so best suitable for difficult fish processing jobs. But secondly, as temporary. I was underlining, like in this article, the Poles are coming just for short time, so they don't pose any prolonged threat to Icelandic culture or the nation. And finally, there were arguments that they were trying to underline the affinity to Icelanders. So it was maybe not based on blood, but more on sharing certain similarities, like for example, sharing the working ethic or drinking habits. The common opinion that Poles acquired, and they are often talked about as dullegur, which means diligent or hardworking. I mean, it kind of ostensibly, shows the respect that Poles gained, but it was also, it was a steam that was coming from the opinion about the work in general. So fish processing is often considered as hard and demanding, Still, it has some ambiguity. And it is part of the Icelandic national identity, but it becomes really associated with the low-class jobs. But with this discussion, gradually, with Poles coming, they became somehow favored labor force in Iceland, and shortly became the largest minority, growing from just 278 in 1990 to almost 5,000 today, 15,000, sorry. Which is, I suppose, the number you have here. Those are numbers of the registered Polish immigrants. People, both people with Icelandic citizenship and with Polish citizenship. But there are much more Poles, because there are many that are coming also working for construction companies as posted workers that are not counted in the statistics. Poles are making about 40% of all foreign residents in Iceland and about 4% of the total Icelandic population. The fastest growth was encountered after the Polish accession to the European Union, which coincided with rapid economic growth in Iceland. And although Iceland introduced 2 years of transition period, the membership opened for contracting companies and posted workers from Poland. In 2003, one American company, Bechtel, was hired to undertake construction of the aluminium smelter in east part of Iceland. Icelandic authorities recommended them to recruit exactly Polish workers. This was this good opinion that we changed, and they were preferred, and so it happened. So the company, for the 4 years they were staying in Iceland, hired about 3,000 Poles, and at the time the Polish community was itself less than 2,000. So just with this one project, the number of Poles doubled. But these opinions about Poles, I mean, being dull, being hardworking, intelligent, and so on, that actually also delineate the place that Poles are having in Icelandic society, the kinds of jobs they can be hired for. Sorry. It was actually apparent also in the crisis when many Poles were losing the jobs and they were expected to leave. So I mean, their presence sort of is reduced to the notion of work. In the study of Lithuanian migrants in Iceland, Kristin Ofstad was showing how they become racialized as others. And as Shiva was noticed, this kind of implication, such as culture other, provides justification for lower wages offered. But in case of Poles, it was often certain housing that were just suitable for Poles and so on. So I mean, we were becoming, in a way, we were emerging like a social class, certain social group in Iceland. And in other studies, it was also shown that it's sometimes that we are really concentrated in low-wage jobs, and there are some difficulties to actually go to kind of advance. Another thing is that with this sort of fast influx of Polish migrants after the opening of the labor market, which also was associated with the shift in the gender composition of migrants. There were more men coming, also shifted discourse. There were more and more voices that were actually directly against Polish migrants. And you have one of such voices here. Poles and Italians come here and take all the construction work from us. People come and take all fish work. Then they are back. There are black people that do not work at all, but come here just to get lost and live on welfare. This is fair. Then these people here, I say stop, no longer, it's enough. There was an association against Poles that was stopped. I mean, those voices are, of course, very prominent. They are maybe not representing majority, but they are sort of strong and get attention. And it is often, they are often counterbalanced by all these arguments referring to migrants' contribution to the economy. So in the wake of this discussion, one of the banks who published a report that was proving the contribution and that the Icelandic economy cannot sustain without foreign labor. Again, there was a public institution that was showing that the contribution of Poles and foreign populations in Iceland are weighing the benefits that they receive in one way or another, and also they are very obedient taxpayers. So I'll just summarize. So this ostensibly positive, at least at the beginning, opinion about the Polish workers that was delivered like in this quotation I have started with, reflects, however, the specific expectation of the Icelandic employers, as well the ideas about the kind of workers they can be, that can best meet those expectations. Moreover, there are this recall that argumentation about Poles being good workers and so on tends to reduce migration to predominantly temporary movement of labor, and significantly it rationalizes the need for foreign workers in the first place.
Thank you very much for the presentation. But maybe we would allow to ask one question. Okay.
So actually, it's pretty sad perspective. I would like to ask you if you have any news from Iceland about maybe some kind of movements, any kind of organizations that work in the field of introducing Poles, migrants into the Icelandic society, any kind of introducing them to be with them in this to, I don't know, live somehow actively like any kind of other citizen in this country.
There are many integration programs going on, and there are also kind of the Polish associations that are working to change the image of Polish migrants. So maybe I was a bit selective, but I mean my point was a little bit to show kind of how this also the levels of familiarity were extending because of the economical needs, and so I mean this was this kind of mainly to justify the migration as a labor migration and portraying the first images and the first kind of the discussion and I just used this one first quotation from the paper. There were more like this kind of that we are good working people and so on.
I'm not words about Poles, just more interested if Icelandic people are even about to introduce the migrants into their world, yes, to their culture.
Yes, but I think that I mean partly also the answer is that it's a very strong perception that those are temporary migrants, and I think that Icelanders just gradually realized that many of these people are actually there to stay. And there are integration programs going on in different ways. This is often done by but I would say NGOs, and there is no like state program a part of giving the funds for this. But I mean, on many levels, I mean, Poles are participating, like referring to the presentation we had before coffee break. There are people who are taking part in politics, and they are integrated by parties, and there's like a huge. There was a city election this year, and many parties had immigrants on their list. So I mean, of course, it's happening on different levels. And I'm saying this kind of very racist voices happen, and they are often silenced by counter arguments. But I'm still, I think, like, especially Eastern European migrants, struggle with this image of being, first of all, temporary, secondly, being workers, and thirdly, workers in this low wage sector.
And maybe if I can add something, I think that Icelandic society is very specific, and there's a huge tension between the political correctness and the strong identity, I suppose.
I think that's what's special in Iceland. Iceland is small and often goes away with some racist arguments, and they themselves say, like, we are small, we have to sort of protect our identity. So kind of it's, and also as being a former colony of Denmark, I mean, they kind of play on this innocence, like they can. But that's why I was also bringing those old discussions. I mean, it was when Iceland was not fully independent, and they were still kind of playing with the ideas about which nation they want to have as the potential workers come.
Thank you very much. Now we ask the next speaker, Lecce Luca from University of Padua. The title of presentation being Immigration in the European Union Paralysis.
All right. Good morning to everyone. My name is Luca Lecce. I'm a master's student of European Studies, and currently I'm doing a double degree program between Krakow University, the Gdyni, and University of Padua. So the aims of these presentations are three. Firstly, I'm going to explain the functioning of the common European asylum system. Secondly, I will get focused into the condition of two frontline countries, specifically Greece and Italy, since the 2015, the so-called refugees crisis. And thirdly, I will analyze a new scenario that could occur with some reform in the asylum system. The reason for which I'm talking about the migration, it's because, as everybody knows, in the last decade, the European Union has been experiencing an important and very problematic moment, and a lot of scholars, politicians, and policy makers have described this moment as very, very important for the European Union integration process. So that's the reason why I'm analyzing the migration, because for me it's a very key aspect of this moment. And as far as I'm concerned, right now the European Union process is stuck, is paralyzed, and for sure I guess that all the European Union community should do something right now. Anyway, as this is working? Yeah, all right. As Antonio Tajani, the European Parliament President, said last June in Vienna, migration is our biggest challenge, and it is putting at risk the very future of the European Union. The European Union expanded its policies area during the 90s after the Maastricht Treaty, and the asylum policy was covered since the Treaty of Lisbon, 1999. And according to the Article 5 of the Treaty of Lisbon, member states share responsibility with the Union in the policy, in the asylum policy. And this picture is very interesting because you can see here that both the European Union and member states can implement this policy, defining standards, rules, and so on. But the key aspect of this picture is, of course, financing, because only the 10% of the whole policy is financed by the European Union. It means that there are, within the system, some countries that finance this policy more than other countries. And we will be back to this point later. So, the pillar of the asylum policy for sure is the common European asylum system, which is the legal framework that covers all the aspects of the asylum process, mainly guarantee and grant international protections. The executive body is the European Asylum Support Office, which supports member states in examining the procedures and so on. Historically, as I said before, we can find a very important, we can describe two stages. The first one, since the Treaty of Amsterdam, because common minimum standards, criteria, mechanisms, and been achieved by the member states. And the second stage is more recent, from 2009, because member states try to harmonize their systems, specifically their judicial systems, with common procedures, common status. However, we are in 2018, and if we have a look at the current system, we can find a lot of differences between the member states, and especially these differences concern the freedom of asylum seekers in terms of length of procedures and reception condition, and especially I would underline the lack of convergence regarding decisions to grant status for specific applicants. What means that even if there are some standards, if we analyze the judicial system of a country, of two countries for instance, Italy and I don't know, Poland, there are a lot of differences. For instance, some procedures take more in Poland, other procedures take less in Italy. And if right now, of course, the system have been stressed, it's because of this problem, because it's not uniformized yet. And among all the legal acts of the European Union, for sure the most discussed has been the Dublin Third, specifically the Regulation 604/2013. The Dublin system can be described as a cornerstone of the common European asylum system. Previously it was the Convention of Dublin in 1990, and then the Dublin Second. Why it's so important? It's so important because this regulation establishes and determines which country is responsible for processing application for international protection. And the principle, the main important principle is the first safe country. It means that when an asylum seeker lands to the European Union borders, these states will have the responsibility to examine the application of the asylum seeker. Other important features of this system is that, of course, there are hierarchical criteria which does not take in consideration the interests and the needs of the applicants. And another important aspect is that the asylum seekers have the possibility to apply to receive international protection to specific country. That's because still, among the 28 countries, there are very huge differences, for instance, in the reception conditions, or still because of existing networks that the asylum seekers themselves have. Since 2015, which was the year with the highest number of refugees that arrived to the EU, a temporary relocation quota system was launched. That's to help mainly Italy and Greece since this crisis occurred. The problem, as we will see later, was that a lot of countries rejected asylum seekers' applications. So, taking a look to this survey, we can describe the so-called phenomena of League 1 and League 2 of states. It means that some states, as Germany, Italy, France, and Greece, receive a lot of applications. But on the other hand, there are other countries which did not receive the same number of applications. That's still because of geographical differences, economical and social differences. So before I mentioned the quota mechanism, and we could say how it works since the 2015, because at the beginning Italy and Greece underwent this crisis, but then when the mechanism was launched, of course the situation changed, and refugees have been relocated to other European Union countries. But a more interesting data is from May 2018, and still these kind of phenomena continue to occur, because we can find countries as Germany or France or Sweden that helped Italy and Greece during this mechanism. But on the other hand, we have some countries like Hungary, Poland, or Denmark. Let's not consider Iceland because it belongs to the ITA, which did not take any migrants. All right. Based on the proposal of the European Commission 2016, for sure the system needs to be reviewed. Needs to be reviewed because it's unfair and unbalanced. And for sure, maybe it's an obvious thing that I'm saying, but all member states should share responsibility for asylum seekers. And of course, these are the main features of this kind of reform. But the last point, for sure, is the most important. I hope that I can capture your attention, and maybe I will indirectly push to raise your hand and ask a question if your position is not the same. But of course, member states which refuse to accept the relocation of applicants should face limitation of their access to the European Union funds, because the main point is that in the last decade, seems that the principle of solidarity and the principle of cooperation, they seem like just to be written in the treaties, written in the papers. But if we are in a union I mean, the European Union is not good just when you can take a lot of funds from the cohesion policy or regional policy or whatever. So I suggest that it's a very important key that needs to be discussed. And in the end, still from the proposal of the Commission to increase the system of the common European asylum, a European Union agency would be very, very, very helpful. This agency should have comprehensive responsibility for both organizing and administering the asylum process, but mainly, and I go back to the first picture, this agency should use funds from the European Union budget. Because according to the multi-annual financial frameworks that was established in 2013, the total amount was €1 trillion, right? And during this planning, which is 6 years, from 2014 till 2020, only 10 billion of euros had been financed towards this policy area. If we consider the amount of money that was financed by Italy during 2016, it was €1.5 billion. So what we can see that is that at the moment the European Union as a whole invests a really low amount of money towards this policy area. Hoping that I did not get bored you, I'm going to finish soon. And yes, before finishing, I cannot hide that the approach of the European Commission disappointed me firstly, but I guess also other people. And still, this approach is inconsistent, and the proposal that have been launched and made, as far as I'm concerned, they were very precarious and contestable. Not just this proposal, but I don't know, for instance, the white paper of the European Union. I don't know if some of you know this, but I think so. And still, migration is very important because it's the keystone of the propaganda of the populist party. So they are, of course, they talk about a lot of stuff, right? But migration is in the center of the circle. And of course, why an effective European reaction is important? Because they would delegitimize these Eurosceptics. So that's why it's still important. Right now, the ordinary legislative procedure is not finished because still this proposal made by the Commission in 2016 to create a European Union asylum agency to review the Dublin system is not over yet. But who knows the political system of the European Union knows at the same time that since the 3 logos were launched within the system, so if a proposal is accepted, I don't know, in a year and a half, so after 3 years we are still here and the proposal has not been accepted. It means that, of course, the agreement between the Parliament and the Member State have not achieved. Have not achieved because we have the election next year. So that's very logical. And for this reason, I guess that the European institutions will not achieve an agreement concerning the migrations. To conclude, it's very interesting, this new axis that was formed by the Visegrad countries, Austria and Italy, and it makes the scenarios very cool, I would say. Yeah, I'm going to conclude with this question. So this new axis is a short-term match of interests of it's a populist alliance with paradoxical chiaroscuros in terms of migration. I am saying that because, as I said before, Italy, with Greece and with all the other Mediterranean countries, suffered a lot the migration crisis, but now they are very close to countries like Poland, Hungary especially, and we know that the situation of this country are totally opposite. So we will know what is going to occur during the next months. That's all. Sorry, it was my first conference, and thank you very much for your attention.
I think you should stay here for a moment.
Oh, right.
I think it was very, not only interesting, but we need this kind of presentation. It is very natural to our countries, and ask questions and other speakers as well. My question is, I see some kind of not consequences. I met some Italian people who complained that Poland, for example, other countries don't take the responsibility for this common problem as European migration crisis. But and I agree personally very much. But how it would be working if you have this populist government as well in Italy? It means this government would ask European Union to help. How would be working?
Yeah, that's very important, but it's difficult to say because so if we get focused on the Italy's position, Italy suffered a lot the refugees crisis, right? And still now the government parties are making their propaganda against migration, so that's why they won the election. And I mean, even for other reasons, but mainly for migration. And that's the point. It's very difficult because at the same time they are discussing. They do not want migrants, refugees, and so on. But at the same time, they are going to ask to change the current system. So they would like to review the Dublin regulations. So that's why they are populists in the end. You know?
Okay. The question.
I think there is a slight problem here, and the problem is called moral hazard. Any policy design is always, inevitably, going to generate some sort of perverse response. What perverse response do you anticipate in this case? Suppose Europe is redesigning its policy. How can it fail?
How can it
fail?
That's a good question. The problem is that I'm not a policymakers, you know. So, and if they are not doing that, I don't know why they should have the answer. What I make here, this is a possible reform. So I'm defending it for sure. But right now it's very difficult because if they have not done anything, it's because it's difficult, I guess. So I don't know. For sure, a common answer needs to be achieved somehow. Honestly, I cannot answer to this question. The problem is that this kind of fragmentation within the country is not very helpful. It's not very helpful. So we have Brexit, and okay, now everything is very disorganized, let's say. But I really don't know. I really don't know. I can understand at the same time that why people do not want migrants. It's easy. I mean, I can give you the perspective as Italians. After the financial crisis and the public debt crisis, a lot of people do not have jobs. So they can say, why we have to accept these people? I mean, that's understandable. That's understandable. Of course, I don't share this view, because as everyone understood, I am pro-immigration. The problem now is that people from, okay, Italy can say, we can take these migrants, we can take refugees, but people from Poland can say, we don't want the migrants. So why the European Union should force us? That's the point. That's the point. Sorry again if I did not answer you.
Okay.
Short question. How many asylums now in Italy?
How many?
How many? Yes.
How many what?
Refugees. Asylums, refugees.
Refugees.
In Italy.
Yeah. This year, since 2015, the number decreased, for sure. Because consider that in 2015, more than almost 1,500,000 migrants arrived to the all external European Union borders. And almost 1 million arrived to Greece and Italy. The problem is the number decreased quite a lot, because the quotas mechanism was launched. So a lot of asylum seekers have been relocated to other countries. And also because Italy made some agree with Libya, which was like the main country in the, everybody knows the story with traffickers, migrants, and so on. And also because when, before the election, the government party changed its approach towards the migration, of course, to get more votes, you know, because the anti-establishment parties were pushing with the migration. Now it's very low. Now this year it's around 16,000 till now. But still we need the precise, of course, data that will be updated in the end of the year. But it's, I mean, compared to 3 years ago, it's very low. Currently, there should be, I'm not sure about it, the main country is taking more refugees is Spain. Because I don't know if you heard what the Home Minister did, closing the ports. It was an issue that exploded like this summer. And our Vice Prime Minister did not accept a lot of boats that were arriving to the Italian coast. But yes, coming back to your answer, should be more than 15,000 around. But the problem is, I'm sorry, the problem is that it's not how many migrants or refugees arrive to Italy. The problem is that they are waiting in the country. Because of course, before to get the international protection, all the national courts need to examine the application to understand if you are really an asylum seeker, if you have a genuine link. It means, I don't know, I would like to go to Germany because my brother is there. Of course, we cannot. You cannot go to Germany. It's not so easy. First, they need to analyze if you really have these networks. What is the problem? So why migration is not accepted? Because these people, what do they do during these 2 years? I mean, if the procedures are not fast, it's a problem because they are in the country, and then they start to sell drugs. They steal or do other stuff. So that's obvious. That's obvious. So for this reason, the system needs to be reviewed.
Okay. Yeah, I was recently in Rome, visited plenty of immigrants from Africa, and people see them. People who are working with migration issues, they ask sometimes, they ask for the Poles why do you still in the European Union you don't want to share these partners and the solidarity? Okay.
If I can ask also the question, I'm sorry, you got so many questions already. However, I would like to ask you a question. If there was any debate on the European Union level about the social system equality between the European Union, because we talk about Dublin 3, yes, as this procedure common for all European Union countries on the level of relocation. However, what you already mentioned, like a minute before, that actually Dublin 3 failure happened from the moment when we already received the asylum seekers and we already started to proceed them. It very much concerned Poland actually, yes. This is a common situation that the asylum seeker is coming to Poland and apply with the application for the refugee status, and during this time take taxi and going to Berlin, yes. And then when Dublin should start to work, yes. And the actually biggest problem is that sometimes people applying twice, like applying in Germany, applying in Poland, they cannot communicate somehow Germany and Poland, they cannot communicate in this subject, etc., etc. But the biggest problem is actually that, okay, we have these lines of refugees, asylum seekers waiting to move from the country to country or even come to European Union. However, I think like Poland and other like countries that cannot support the refugees with the integration strategy, with any kind of social system that really supports them some kind of safety, yes, that they will feel safety with their families. They already were disappointed with this system because, okay, we had even the, okay, sorry, maybe I'm a little bit not clear. However, for example, we had this program when this one of organizations got 100 asylum seekers from Syria. It was a Christian organization, and I was conducting researches in this subject. Only one family left in Poland. Why? Because we just lost all these families, because when they came, they saw like, okay, we don't get any support actually. We don't get any kind of like human conditions to really even wait for what happened with us in Poland. So actually, most of them just left to the other European Union countries. And this failure from Poland, that like why we should even like receive these people if they are like running away from us. Okay, we might try to get the relocated people, relocated refugees, let's say. But actually, usually, even before they get the papers, they just like disappear to nowhere. So, what I'm aiming to, it's about the social system, yes? I think like, I was working with the asylum seekers and I see very huge need of the European Union countries to work together on some kind of common social system that will support this person, some kind of equal feeling of support in each of European Union countries, not only in few of them, that they can get some shelter, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's the reason. I don't want to be repetitive, but that's the problem. For instance, I'm from Sicily, right? So Emigracja is not like just in movies, or it belongs to the system. By the way, it was born before the Italy itself. So the problem is that, as you said, these people, when they arrive, of course, they can wait like a week, 2 weeks, and then they disappear. It's like in they cannot. Of course, there's the Eurodac and so on. Their fingerprints is saved and so on. But that's the problem, of course, because what is needed is a social integration. It's a social integration because, and still. Of course, the European Asylum Agency can be useful, but implemented with some kind of social integration for sure, because it's asymmetric among the member states.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry.
We have 5 minutes only. Maybe you have some questions to the other speakers.
I was wondering about your methodology. Why did you choose to show people the photos of families and individuals? Because I suppose they know what a black person or what an Asian person looks like anyways, and these photos carry so much more information with them, especially one of Bill Cosby. So why?
Of course, when you ask people, the general question. What is your approach to refugee from non-EU country? They will have nothing to imagine. So we try to confront them with some visible appearance. It was impossible for us to take real migrants and ask people to evaluate them and give points of sympathy. So we simply choose the pictures.
I guess so. Okay, my question also goes to you, because you mentioned the radicalization of the youth, like this first-time voters. But then in your research, the one who perceived non-European migrants positive was the young generation. How is it possible?
There were two samples, like two segments. They had very similar approach. Young people under 18, they had very similar attitude as the old generation. And then there was a huge change among students. So education matters, as I said, and maybe young people under the university age, they are a good target to focus, because maybe they are influenced by their parents and others. It's a huge discussion now also in the Czech Republic, that schools are spreading multiculturalism and values favoring migration, and some parents are obviously angry that schools are political and they are spreading political opinions to the children. So society is, of course, divided, and some families, they don't welcome this situation, and it was also program of some political parties during municipality elections. There were billboards clearly saying we will get rid of multiculturalism from schools.
Thank you very much.
Follow up if you'd like.
No, I just wanted, so you had two sub-samples, as I understand. Like, you also have the sub-sample of people under 18, yes?
Yes.
No, thanks very much. We have the same problem.
So actually, I had a methodological question as well, two-part. So the first part would be with the photos, how do you control for cultural bias? Because we had people, we could say, represented in different types of national dress. I would say it's very different to show a Middle Eastern family from the US who's not in typical cultural dress versus one that's not. And my second question was, how did you decide on your samples? So how did you recruit people into your project?
It was more or less a random selection of the people, but we had some idea what the structure of the Slovak society looks like, and we tried to search for people from all the groups. So it was not totally random, but when we saw that we have less women than men, we tried to make it 50-50. Of course, you never meet exact sample in population, because the city has its life, and some people from villages, they travel less, so it's almost impossible to meet them. And we were not thinking very much about cultural bias, so we were not concerning about this, just because we try to select positive pictures. Maybe this is also like the methodological problem, because when we will put there some negative people, and also mainly maybe different people as well from different ethnic groups, it will completely different. But you have limited time to conduct the survey, and it's impossible to put there 30 pictures and evaluate all of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much thank you very much to speakers, our speakers, and for the audience for this interesting discussion. And we'll continue this subject in the next session, 120, 120 part 1, and where it will be in Polish crisis, migration in Europe and its consequences. Probably next room. Thank you very much.
And it's time for a break, it's time for lunch, so I invite you to the restaurant.